All right, 7 hours, 23 minutes remain. It's my final check of the moai head before I retire for the night. Hope it finishes. So, good night, sweet prince. And what is up, guys? Technical Stinkers here, checking in on our little 3D print operation for today. So I own a business. It has nothing to do with 3D printing, but I got interested in 3D printing, so I'm trying it here at home, seeing if I can learn about 3D printers, generate some sales, grow it, maybe scale it up, not sure, just kind of documenting the process along the way. This is just exhibition, it's not instructional, but join me in this fun. Maybe you could learn something too, or teach me something. So what am I working on today? Well, if you've been following the channel, then you know I got a lot of things going on, and we've got some big things that finished today. Big, wink wink. Let's check in on some of the smaller stuff first. All right, so up here, rhino head. I can't see that high. I got the camera on a stick, but it's looking pretty good from here. This is the back section of the rhino head with ears. If you recall, my goal is to print this life size in pieces just like this, like I'm doing on the Cobra, but these pieces on the Orangestorm Giga. That way it would allow me to print a rhinoceros head in its actual life size form, and maybe I can get some big money out of it. Big rhinoceros size money. Over here on the A1, our Christmas girl is kind of getting very close to the end. I don't see where it says how much time, but it says it's 95% complete, and I believe it. Let's see once the plate comes up. Oh, whoa, careful now. These are looking pretty good. She's like sitting on a candy cane. I printed the top section here as like kind of a test. I think it's meant to be an ornament, but I'm not sure about the center of gravity. We'll see if it like balances out when we hang it, and I don't have a Christmas, maybe I need to go buy a Christmas tree. And the first section, I mean the most complex section of our new character model here from Dark Digital, finishing up in the night. Let's take a look. These I was, you know, like kind of like apprehensive about, like I was worried that they wouldn't come out because they were so complex. And it's not really that complex, but you know, I just kind of, instead of doing a test print first, I test printed it in black. And then I painted it and sent 4 of them at once onto the plate, and it came out great. This is, you know, optimized for FDM more so than the Chronicles models are, and it looks great. It's a 0.2 layer height, so it's going to have layer lines. See, most definitely layer lining for sure. But overall, the details came out pretty good. It's very well marked. The controller looks pretty good. I mean, it's like really fine there. I didn't expect too much out of that. The back of her hair looks good, headphones, cat ears, and other things. I'm not gonna like feature the character models like overly too much. You know, if I'm doing it, I'm just gonna document the process. I know in the beginning a lot of people had issue with the character models, but I don't, so that's what I'm gonna do. I mean, if you don't like seeing things like that, then go to church and pray on it or something. I don't know, whatever makes you feel better, but you know, it is what it is. Down here on Cobra number 4, the snout of the rhinoceros, printing again, and again having a lot of success with this finer layer height with lightning infill. Everything's coming out pretty good, a little stringy on the inside, but it's just coming out pretty good. And we're going to take a look too at the one that came off the plate yesterday. Very similar result, looking very nice. All right, here it is. The giant moai head is done. Last night did sort of a preventative filament swap out. This is a 5 kilogram spool. It got to about here where I could start seeing like the inner core. And I was like, you know what, I'm gonna go ahead and swap this out because I'm going to sleep soon. I didn't want this thing pausing for a length of time in the night and that creating any sort of issue when I came back to swap it in, because it would be near the top of his head. So it looks pretty good from now. I haven't looked at this thing at all. I do it live. I do it for you guys' benefits. So let's take this thing off the plate. No banana for scale, but I have a tape measure for scale, which is kind of almost better than a banana in some ways. Some might say that. It's just my opinion. Tape measure is better than a banana for scale. So let's see here. Yep, he's just shy of 36 tall, so about a meter moai. Oh, that's heavy. Holy shit. Look at that thing. Head for scale. Gotta get the good thumbnail here. All right, and some other things I've been working on. Got these off Amazon, super duper cheap. Keychains, because like revisiting the whole keychain thing a few episodes ago, I had mentioned like, you know, kind of fleshing out to see if like doing the whole small print keychain kind of thing. I was referencing K-pop bands, making keychains for those, or printing like miniature Stanley cups or, you know, tumblers or whatever, following the trend sort of thing, but not the trend of like slinky dragons and fidget spinners and whatnot. You know, for instance, like when I saw, it's kind of dark humor, but like when the submarine exploded a year and a half, 2 years ago, or whatever it was, people were printing miniature versions of that submarine. So obviously a bit morbid and dark, but that's a good example of like a trend, you know, so like suddenly it's all over the news, and there's plenty of people out there with dark senses of humor that would maybe want to buy that submarine, and I don't particularly care. So I'll take their money because I can spend it better. Working on some things with that, trying to flesh that out, test that out a little bit. Here's the back section of the rhino head. So this is the complete one. Did it with brim because the cobras are kind of like, I forget which cobras like have the sort of the worst examples of layer adhesion. So some brim on here, but overall the surface finish came out great. And I'm attributing that to running a 0.2 layer height with a 0.4 nozzle. Just kind of, someone had mentioned printing with like an even divisor. Someone had mentioned printing with like an even divisor of the nozzle width to just get overall better prints. And I guess that worked. I mean, because typically like prints like this, I'd run it like a 0.28, which is kind of like the maximum I mean, it's technically 0.32, but 0.28 is kind of like, it's approaching the maximum of that 0.4 nozzle. And so like I've got the time, why bother? And that's kind of another point I wanted to kind of speak to, is some people were like saying the time pricing the prints, like for a bamboo printer should be priced at, I forget what the actual term was, but let's say $5 per hour of print time. Something like the Giga should be $10 an hour of print time, whatever. I understand that, and I do like think that mode ever since like hearing that comment, and kind of like factor that into my decision making as it pertains to pricing. But then again, I think of like, say, the character models obviously take a long time, and the way I'm pricing them, like, you know, that $50 to $100 range, like somewhere in there, yeah, they take a long time, but if I was doing it priced on that model, then they would be enormously expensive. So then what's the solution? So the solution is to either cut costs or raise their prices, but if the market's telling you that people aren't willing to pay those prices, then you either got to cut costs or just price it lower, because the profit is there. It just takes a long time to print. You know, if you factor in the wear and tear on the machine, sure, but that's kind of like a really gray area. I'm not sure someone can really like nail that down to a precise amount of hours. Now you could look at the percentage of failure rates of the different models of printers at certain hour marks, depends on the maintenance schedules as well. I haven't really done any significant maintenance on mine, but I kind of feel like I don't run my printers as hard as like say a farm would when they're just absolutely going 24/7. Mine do have a lot of downtime. So I'm not sure that that pricing model really fits for a lot of these things, especially art prints, but I could certainly see how if you were doing functional prints, you could use that model. But if you're doing functional prints, you probably maybe wouldn't be using, I mean, you could use a bamboos, they're great printers. But I think, I kind of feel like people would be using a more industrial sort of solution if you're getting into that realm of pricing it out down to the, you know, the second, down to the gram kind of thing. All right, here she is. The giant moai head came out great. Yeah, super duper thrilled. Some areas, admittedly, some areas, were maybe a little sus, but it's nothing major. So if you remember a few episodes ago, there was like a tiny fleck. I can't see it. I got the camera on a thing. Tiny little fleck over here of a kind of a dark spot. And then up here on the nose, or where was it? See, I don't remember. It couldn't have been that bad. Is it on the nose? I think you can only notice when you look top down. Okay, so here on the top of the head. Let's give this 10 minutes to focus. So on the top of the head here, on this sort of overhang, it's like some, I guess it's like an interior overhang. It looks like some like gap here between the layer lines, because this is a 0.5 layer height, and it's kind of like making its way up. There's no adaptive layer height in this, so maybe that would have corrected for it. Some tiny little gapping here, but there is no question how solid this thing is. Double walled, 2 wall loops inside and outside, and like 5%, maybe I think like 5% infill. It's built like a brick shit house. It's, you know, super duper sturdy. My plan was to paint it, but I seem to remember there was some type of product that was kind of like a primer for 3D prints that would smooth it out, that kind of like, you know, falls into the cracks and crevices, and then you apply your paint on top. Maybe just any primer would do that, but I think this was made for 3D printing and like has polymers and science and shit in it that makes it a little more smooth. So maybe this is an ideal candidate for that, because I don't want to screw up the painting on this. Yeah, those little brown flecks just come right off. This is fantastic. Maybe in the future some adaptive layer height on this. A lot of people giving me tips, tricks, and settings. Paul reached out with some tips and tricks, because this is the model that he revised for me on running this in the future, or running the Giga in general in the future, to really up the speed and get these results without it taking, you know, 4 or 5 days. So in the end, moai head ended up being just shy of 7 kilos. So that comes out to, yeah, probably let's say about $80 worth of filament. Overall time about 4 days, so let's just say $5 in power cost. Another thing too is someone came in with a comment saying that my power calculation, because I was referencing my power rate, how much I pay for power, they were referencing that, saying it's likely wrong because there are other charges in your power bill. I have another YouTube channel where I do cryptocurrency mining, so I know precisely what my power rate is. I'll just put it up here. This is my power bill for last month. It closed out 2-3 days ago. My power rate is about between 7.5 and 8 cents per kilowatt hour. For most people, I think the national average is like 12 to 14 cents, so I'm getting about half of that power rate. Because I use a lot of power. So you know, it's like nearly $800 this month, and that's just the one power bill. I have two because I have my house. So yeah, it adds up pretty quick. But that is indeed my power rate. So for the moai head, I'm going to count $5 for that. So let's just say $85. We're not working in capitalization or amortization or wear and tear or any of that on the machine. It's just at this point impossible to sort of calculate that kind of thing. Again, if we were running it in a 24/7 duty cycle, and we knew that the Orangestorm Giga is likely to die at the 10,000 hour mark or something like that, then yeah, we could chop it up from there. But again, overall, $2,500 machine. That seems like a lot. That is a lot for a 3D printer, but not really for a machine that like makes money, especially if, assuming I'm able to sell this thing. Let's just say I sell this thing for $400. I think that's quite reasonable to sell for $400. You know, then that's the profit rip on that, the gross profit anyway, is like 10% of the cost of the machine. So, you know, that's kind of unheard of with any other type of production machine or any type of business whatsoever. But again, there's a lot of risk in that, because this thing could have failed right here and the print would have been maybe done. You know, you can probably salvage it in some cases, but for a lot of the smaller machines, you can't really do that. And I've had a lot of failures, obviously. You've been watching the channel, so I'm not too concerned about that part. I'm just going to take the gross profit and kind of these big chonky sort of things as we move forward, because again, for the viewer, for people watching, it's just my opinion that it doesn't really make sense to overanalyze to the nth degree. Because if you have a business that's making like $1 billion a year, then yeah, maybe it makes sense to audit how much you're spending on paper clips and stationery per year, because if you just don't buy as many paper clips, then you saved $1 million or whatever. Again, at this scale, you know, $80 for a product that lists for 400, it's not that bad. You know, manufacturing, I'm not sure where that falls in line, because different manufacturings have different sort of markups on different and various types of products. But for something like this, I think I'm good. Let me know what you think in the comments. Now it's time to really embarrass myself. The other thing I was working on too, just for the sake of the vlog, I'm going to incorporate this into the next few episodes, because it's just going to take a few days to do it. The Orangestorm Giga, the enclosure, the shower curtains, leaves a lot to be desired. Additionally, I need some protection on top, because I am, after that very first spool flipped off and fell down inside the print on top of the moai head, I've been hyper concerned about enclosing it in a more proper manner. So I did have some very thick, like 1/4-inch plexi at the warehouse, secured that, brought it back. And so I'm starting to build out like a hard shell enclosure, but nothing that's like precision fit like a lot of these options that are online, because I already have the plexi. I don't need it to be, you know, precision fit. And I don't want like a proper door on it, because I don't really have the clearance for it. So what I did is I've taken the opportunity to start designing in an actual CAD modeling program some of the pieces and parts that I'm going to need for this. So I wanted to start with the top, the thing that I needed the most. So I'm just going to take a 4x4 piece of plexi, lay it on top, and have a grommet, a hole in the middle of the plexi for which the filament can run through and do its thing, and then I can worry about the other parts. And now that the moai head's finished, I can kind of focus on doing this a little more. So I'm using Shaper. Again, if you've been following the channel, you know I tried Fusion 360, Plasticity. Tinkercad's my main horse, but I was like, I need a proper program. I like Shaper, and I feel like I could get my head around Shaper the easiest. The only problem is this shit costs like $300 a year. And, you know, if it was 300 bucks just straight up, I'd be like, okay, maybe. $300 a year, what are you thinking? Anyway, first thing I had up here, because I don't know how to export video from an iPad into my video editor, and this just seems simpler, is the actual grommet section. So this I will put in the middle. It's a very simple sort of donut 2-inch opening in the middle because I have 2-inch bits to do it. And then what I did on the interior here is I was trying to chamfer out the innards as much as I can, because the filament, when it goes in, it's going to be going, you know, all these different directions. I didn't want any hard edges rubbing on the filament and, you know, just kind of damaging it or leaving flecks of stuff down in there. So I tried to chamfer that around. I could look at other solutions in the future, maybe a nylon ring or something like that, because I think that probably works better. Additionally, how do I do this? Nothing incriminating on here, right? Additionally, that plexi sitting on top, I don't want any bow in it, and I don't want any chance of it falling inside the printer. So I am gonna run some supports across the Orangestorm Giga, and I'm just gonna use 1/2-inch EMC to run across. So I needed a bracket that clips on the edges, and then I just kind of, hey, I'm just starting. Are you laughing at me? To go on the edges that the 1/2-inch EMC can fit in. It's literally a hollow cylinder on top of a clip here. Design this, not one lesson. What do you think? Yeah, I know, right? I mean, super smart. So I went ahead and printed those up. Follow the channel if you want to kind of watch my process going through that. But yeah, really liking Shaper. Let me know, do you use Shaper in the comments below? Do you have any good resources for it, for learning? That, again, because I ask these questions and then I say, like, I'd like a solution to this, but I have all these criteria that need to fit my certain neuroses before I'm able to accept it. I think one of the main problems that I have with a lot of these tutorials is they're like 1.5 hours long, and they go so slow. It's a lot of talking, and I'm not here I am making a video where I'm just like talking endlessly. But I wouldn't watch my own videos because I don't like sitting and listening to people talk. I kind of like to get to the point. And so I found a lot of TikToks for Shaper that work great, because it's just like, you need to make a cylinder here, 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 and here, and you're done. And that works great. But it's very hard to find those. There's a few channels that do it like that. But oftentimes I'm looking for very precise, sort of like, how do I do this very specific thing? And it's kind of hard to search for that. Like, how do I make this shape do this thing? You know, there's no way to really search for that without having a holistic view of the program. So gonna be working on Shaper, gonna be working on the Rhino head, gonna be working on getting some paint, or at least ideas for paint on Mr. Moai here. Let me know in the comments below. Do you know what I was talking about with that spray that evens everything out? Let me know, because that would be super duper helpful. Also need to start working on pricing for this thing, and maybe I'll just kick it to the stores. And additionally, I need to know what to print next on the Giga. I got to get this enclosure on it. Hopefully you can accomplish that in the next few days. And yeah, I think we're primed and we're set up. Currently running a sale on Etsy as well. Dropped the prices of the big pew-pews like 15%. So we'll see if that generates some more traffic or some sales, because that would be nice. Again, just trying to sort of different things to see ultimately what works and what doesn't. Appreciate you guys following along in this process. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Be sure to like the video because it's the nice thing to do, and subscribe for more content like this. I'm the Technicals. See you next time.